We continue with our series, Traces of the Past. Some 400,000 German Jews fled the Nazis to other countries, taking parts of their cultural heritage with them. Our reporters have traveled the globe, searching for traces of that cultural heritage. This week, we're in Turkey.
Here in Turkey, I'm proud to be Jewish.
The only Jewish thing about me is my cat. I gave her a name from the Torah.
At home, we always listen to Yiddish records.
Robert, Joanna, and Isel all have Ashkenazi and Sephardic roots, with ancestors who came from Germany and Eastern Europe. And they all live in Turkey. 3 perspectives, 3 stories, 3 Jews who live in a Muslim country. Robert Schilt is an entrepreneur and one of 20,000 Jews who live in Turkey. He calls himself a mix of East and West. His great-grandparents were tailors who came from Austria. In the 19th century, they turned their backs on the rising tide of anti-Semitism in Europe and settled in Istanbul.
The Ottoman Empire was ethnically diverse, so there was no discrimination, or lessorities, as an Austrian friend of mine likes to call minorities. That was what made life here very peaceful and pleasant for the Jewish community.
The new arrivals tended to keep to themselves. Robert's grandparents and parents spoke German to one another and read German classics such as Goethe and Stefan Zweig. Robert also believes in the importance of holding on to one's roots. He observes the Sabbath and loves to celebrate traditional Jewish family festivals. He spent some time studying in Austria, but eventually returned to Istanbul. It's his home, even if German is his first language.
We're here in front of the German high school. I went to school here for 12 years, and my son did as well.
Galata used to be Istanbul's Jewish quarter. Increasing numbers of German émigrés flocked here after the Nazis came to power in 1933. During the Third Reich, many Jewish artists and scholars suffering political persecution in Germany sought refuge in Turkey. They made a valuable contribution to Ataturk's new republic. Composer Paul Hindemith founded the country's first modern music conservatory. Legal scholar Ernst Eduard Hirsch was involved in the drafting of the Turkish Commercial Code and Copyright Act. And biologist Alfred Heilbronn founded Istanbul's first botanical gardens.
For a number of reasons, there were virtually no ties at all between Jewish German scholars and the Jewish community. First and foremost, these gentlemen didn't identify as Jewish. They only thought about their identity when Hitler came along and they were expelled from the country. And obviously there were big cultural gaps between the Jewish people who lived here. The scholars weren't religious, so they had no contact with the synagogues. After 1945, they gradually left, most of them returning to Germany, but some also went to the United States and a few to Israel.
According to artist Isel Rosenthal, who also has German roots, this was due mainly to the rise in Turkish nationalism. Now 60, he runs the Jewish cultural center Schneider Temple in Istanbul. Many of his Jewish friends left Turkey in the 1950s. Hostility to Turkey's non-Muslim population was rife, and many people who belonged to minorities were forced into exile. Isel Rosenthal's family stayed. After all, they had lived in Istanbul for over 2 centuries.
I'm by no means a religious man, and I see my Jewishness mainly as a cultural legacy, a tradition, one that is slowly disappearing. The majority of Turkey's Jews are Sephardic, which means their roots are Spanish. The Ashkenazi community, which originally came from Western Europe, is dwindling. They only have one synagogue here. Many of them do what I myself did, marry a Sephardic Jew, which means the boundaries are increasingly blurred.
Rosenthal is a caricaturist who explores this subject in his art. He speaks neither Yiddish nor German, much to his regret. He shows us a family heirloom.
This is my grandparents Fritz and Clara's wedding invitation. They married here in the Schneider temple. The building used to be a synagogue. I found it by chance after my aunt died. Is it German or Yiddish? Unfortunately, I can't understand a word.
Why would he? Isel Rosenthal grew up speaking Turkish. Most Jews in Turkey don't tend to draw attention to their religion, and never did.
There's no really blatant anti-Semitism here. Nonetheless, you're often made to feel that you don't belong. In rural areas, as soon as people hear my name, they start giving me funny looks and asking if I'm German. No joke, that's how it is here.
23-year-old artist Joanna Cohen grew up in a liberal Jewish family with a Sephardic mother and a German stepfather. She says her religion simply isn't an issue.
I don't like this Jewish label. I see myself as a citizen of the world. I don't see myself as belonging to a minority.
Her work is about music and self-discovery. Her Jewish background has never played a role in her art, and it's not an issue that interests her friends either.
My generation doesn't give a hoot about religion. I have friends who are Christian, others who are Turkish Muslims, and others who are Jewish. So what?
Joanna's attitude is typical of the younger generation of Turkish Jews. They feel none of the split identity their forefathers struggled with. They see their roots as Turkish and feel part of Turkish society.
Next week, we look for traces of the past in China, specifically Shanghai, where many German Jews sought refuge.